The atmosphere by the water was unbelievably quiet. The surface of the lake lay as smooth as a giant mirror reflecting the sky. With no loud sounds and no obvious signs of life. But to the Hadzabe people, that very stillness was the most suspicious thing of all. They understood that beneath the seemingly harmless water could be hiding one of the most dangerous predators in the wilderness. As the sun gradually climbed higher, the group moved toward the water's edge. Before them stretched damp bands of sand and a few faint tracks leading from the shore into the water before disappearing. To others, those traces might have meant nothing, but to hunters who had spent their entire lives observing nature, they were a clear message that something already claimed this place. No one walked directly to the water's edge. The group slowed down, placing each step carefully on the soft ground. They avoided making any unnecessary noise, because in an environment like this, even the slightest disturbance could change the situation. Their eyes constantly scanned every direction. They were not only watching the surface of the water, but also paying attention to unusual colors in the mud, dark patches beneath the trees, and even small ripples that appeared and vanished. A crocodile is a master of camouflage. It does not need to move much to become nearly invisible. That is why the real hunt begins with patience rather than action. After many minutes of observation, one member of the group quietly signaled. No words were spoken. A simple nod was enough for everyone to understand what was happening. They quickly adjusted their positions, spreading out in a wide arc along the shoreline while maintaining contact through eye movements. A gentle breeze sent steady ripples across the lake. Then, among countless natural movements, something unusual appeared. A dark object shifted briefly before disappearing beneath the surface. To an outsider, it might have looked like nothing more than a drifting log, but to the Hadzabe, it was the target. What happened next unfolded far more quickly than the earlier silence had suggested. The entire group sprang into action at once. The distance was closed in a matter of seconds. The water suddenly erupted with powerful movement. Large waves spread outward in every direction, shattering the stillness that had dominated the morning. The struggle lasted only a short time, but it was intense. Then, just as quickly as it had begun, everything gradually settled. The lake returned to its peaceful appearance, as if nature had just concealed a secret known only to those who were there to witness it. After leaving the water's edge, the group moved to a drier area to process their catch. The work began immediately with remarkable skill and efficiency. There was not a moment of hesitation. Each person took on the task they knew best. Usable parts were carefully set aside, while anything unnecessary was quickly discarded. Every movement was precise and effective, reflecting knowledge and experience passed down through generations of survival in the wild. Once the initial preparation was complete, their attention shifted to another familiar task, preparing a meal. Dry branches were gathered from the surrounding area and arranged into a small pile. Before long, the first sparks appeared, and a fire slowly took shape. They needed no stove or modern equipment, only a steady source of heat and their own experience. The food was placed near the glowing embers, where the warmth spread evenly and gradually. When the food reached the desired level of doneness, everyone began taking their share. No one gave instructions, and no rules were spoken aloud. Those sitting closest took their portions first, and naturally shared with the people around them. Pieces of food were passed from hand to hand in a familiar rhythm. Some ate immediately while the food was still hot, while others left theirs near the embers for a few more minutes. The pace differed from person to person, yet it never felt disconnected. Everything blended into a natural sense of unity. Gradually, the meal came to an end. A few people stood up first to gather the items they needed to carry with them. Others remained seated a little longer, enjoying the peaceful afternoon. The small fire had faded to a handful of glowing coals. For the Hadzabe, this was not a special event, but simply a familiar part of everyday life. From observing nature and searching for food to preparing and sharing the harvest, everything flowed seamlessly, like the natural rhythm of a new day, ending as gently as it had begun.
As a thin layer of mist still hovered over the vast grasslands of Tanzania, the small Hadzabe camp was already beginning a new day. This was not going to be an ordinary foraging trip. The previous afternoon, several hunters had discovered large tracks deeply pressed into the soft ground near a seasonal waterhole. The tracks belonged to a herd of African buffalo, animals renowned for their immense strength and unpredictable temperament. For the Hadzabe people, this was a rare opportunity to bring back enough food to sustain the entire community for many days. Before setting out, the atmosphere in the camp felt different from usual. The women prepared water containers and simple food supplies for the long journey ahead. Children gathered around the fire, watching attentively as the men inspected their bows and arrows, some of which had been prepared days in advance. No one appeared rushed. For the Hadzabe, hunting does not begin with chasing prey, but with patience. Every step of preparation reflects knowledge passed down through generations of living in the wilderness. As the sun rose higher above the horizon, the hunting party moved into savanna. They traveled in a long line, making almost no sound at all. Their eyes continuously scanned the ground for even the smallest clues. A fresh hoofprint, a few bent blades of grass, or a layer of mud drying along the edge of a water source could all tell the story of where the buffalo herd had gone. After hours of tracking, the hunters began to notice clearer signs. Low shrubs had been pressed flat, and patches of freshly disturbed earth suggested that the herd had passed through the area not long before. The deeper they moved into the hunting grounds, the more tense the atmosphere became. African buffalo are not animals to be taken lightly. A fully grown adult can weigh nearly a ton and possesses enough power to toss aside almost any threat if it feels cornered. For this reason, the Hadzabe never approach a hunt recklessly. They pause on a low rise to observe from a distance. Beyond the tall grass, the herd was slowly moving toward a shallow depression in the land. Their curved horns stood out beneath the sunlight like enormous crescent blades gliding across a sea of golden grass. The hunters quickly spread out in different directions. Rather than approaching head-on, they used the terrain and wind direction to their advantage as they gradually closed the distance. Every movement was carefully calculated. A sudden gust carrying human scent could cause the entire herd to disappear in an instant. After nearly an hour of maneuvering around bushes and shallow gullies, they were close enough to observe each individual animal. The lead hunter patiently waited for the perfect moment before signaling the rest of the group to prepare. At last, the decisive moment arrived. A large buffalo separated from the herd and moved toward a patch of dense brush. For a few brief seconds, everything seemed to fall silent. The hunters focused all their attention on the target. Then the stillness shattered as the herd suddenly detected the presence of humans. Clouds of dust billowed into the air as pounding hooves turned the savannah into a scene of chaos. A short but intense pursuit unfolded amid heavy breathing and the thunderous rhythm of both human and animal footsteps. As the sun began to sink toward the western horizon, the hunting party returned to camp. News of a successful expedition quickly spread throughout the community. Children ran out to greet them from afar, while the elders smiled with quiet satisfaction beside a fire that was being rekindled. The next task was to share the harvest with everyone. For the Hadzabe, hunting is never the achievement of a single individual, but the accomplishment of the entire community. Every portion of food is distributed fairly so that no one is left behind. As night gradually settled over the Tanzanian savannah, everyone gathered around the flickering firelight. Laughter, stories, and memories of the day's hunt blended with the sounds of the African night. In an increasingly modern world, the Hadzabe people continue to maintain a way of life deeply connected to the land, the animals, and the natural rhythms that surround them. The buffalo hunt provides more than food. It reflects a profound knowledge, patience, and adaptability that have enabled this community to endure for countless generations in the wild landscapes of Tanzania.
Across the hot, dry savannas of Tanzania, the Hadza people continue to live without electricity, modern machinery, or stockpiles of food for the future. Each day begins by reading tracks on the ground, listening to the sounds of nature, searching for water, gathering wild fruits, collecting honey, and hunting with tools they craft themselves. Yet this way of life is not simply about hardship or scarcity. It is a survival system that has been developed, preserved, and passed down through countless generations. One morning, a group of Hadza men steps out onto the savannah carrying their bows and arrows. They move low to the ground, keeping their distance from one another while carefully observing every small sign beneath their feet. They must recognize the slightest changes in their surroundings, such as a blade of grass recently bent down, a fresh footprint, or a faint sound coming from the brush ahead. Some days, they walk for hours and return with almost nothing. Because they are so familiar with this uncertainty, the Hadza have developed a unique mindset: never underestimate any source of food that nature provides. Even if an entire day of hunting yields only a single warthog, it can still become a valuable source of energy when combined with the results of many other hunting trips. More importantly, the constant search for food keeps them alert, observant, and ready to adapt to their surroundings. After hours of moving across the grasslands, the group spots a deer in the distance. The moment an arrow is released, the hunt turns into a long pursuit. The animal repeatedly changes direction while the men patiently follow its trail. Eventually, after an exhausting chase, they succeed in catching up to and bringing down their prey. Behind every Hadza hunt lies a meticulous process of crafting bows and arrows. They personally search the forest for suitable wood because not every tree has the flexibility and strength required to make a reliable bow. Even the arrow shafts must be carefully straightened and balanced to ensure stable flight. The arrowheads are sharpened to improve penetration and increase effectiveness during the hunt. For the Hadza, a bow and arrow are far more than simple hunting tools. They are essential instruments of survival and an important part of every man's role within the community. While the men are away hunting, the women who remain at camp work continuously to support daily life. They do far more than care for their families or prepare meals. They help maintain the entire living space of the community. One of the most remarkable aspects of the Hadza diet is that it depends entirely on what nature provides each day. There are no fixed menus and no long-term meal plans. Their food may consist of hunted meat, wild tubers, fruits, or freshly collected honey. Everything comes directly from the environment around them.
Has time to set fruit and fully ripen on the
When the hunters return, the food is prepared and divided into portions. Everyone gathers together to eat what was obtained that day without arguing about who receives more or less. Everything is shared fairly. Most importantly, everyone has something to eat, and no one is left behind. This principle has existed within the Hadza community for generations. Sharing not only strengthens social bonds but also helps the entire group survive in the challenging environment of the African savanna. When we look at the lives of the Hadza people, it is difficult not to be amazed by how they have preserved skills that much of humanity has gradually lost: reading nature's signs, crafting tools by hand, building shelters, and sharing everything they acquire with the community. The Hadza never know exactly what they will hunt today, nor do they store much for tomorrow. Yet it is precisely this way of life that has allowed them to preserve their identity for thousands of years and remain one of the most unique communities still existing in the world today.
Situations, the Hadzabe must act.
Across the vast African savanna, where life and death are separated by only a few steps, I witnessed a rare moment when humans came face to face with the wild. This was not an ordinary hunt, but an encounter between the Hadzabe tribe and the most feared predator of the land, the lion. As the first light of dawn spread across the horizon, a distant roar shattered the silence, reminding everyone that humans are not the only creatures on this savanna with survival instincts and hunting skills. For many people, the lion is a symbol of power. But for the Hadzabe, one of the oldest hunter-gatherer communities still living today, it can sometimes be a very real threat. Encounters like this test the survival skills of the entire community. In an environment where food determines survival, protecting the results of a hunt is critically important. Hunters understood the danger before them, and the mood within the group quickly became serious. They carefully inspected their bows, tightened their bowstrings, and prepared arrows coated with traditional poison made from local plants to improve their ability to defend themselves. Wooden spears and hunting knives were also kept ready as a last resort if the situation moved beyond their control. As the sun climbed higher, an antelope lying in an open area became the focus of the hunt. Suddenly, a fully grown male lion emerged from the nearby grass. Its massive body and fierce stare made it clear that it had no intention of giving up the prey. A deep roar echoed across the savanna, asserting its claim and instantly narrowing the distance between man and predator. The hunters held their ground, gripping their weapons tightly while watching every movement of the lion. This was no longer simply about securing food. It had become a contest of strategy between two sides determined to protect their own interests. Two young hunters quickly raised their bows, while the oldest and most experienced hunter stepped forward with a spear in hand to lead the group.
Apple. Huh?
Standoff continued in an atmosphere filled with tension. The lion constantly watched, growled, and weighed the possibility of attacking. On the other side, the hunters maintained a solid formation without showing any sign of panic. It was a moment when generations of experience proved their value. Rather than allowing fear to take control, they remained calm and applied steady pressure, forcing the lion to reconsider the risks of the confrontation. They also used their bows and arrows to keep pressure on the animal. In the end, persistence paid off. After several tense minutes, the lion realized that the cost of claiming the meal might be too high. With a frustrated roar, it turned away and disappeared into the tall grass. There was no dramatic chase, but the moment demonstrated that human determination and teamwork can change the outcome even when facing the most feared predator. As the sun began to set, the hunters carried their prey back to camp. The tension of the savannah gave way to excitement and relief. The animal was cleaned beside the camp and divided into portions to be roasted over glowing coals. The smell of cooking meat drifted through the open area as everyone gathered around the
future
fire.
depends on a bold decision. And lions frequently steal the Hadzabe's hard-earned kill situations. The Hadzabe must act. It is their honor, their sustenance, and their ancestral.
For the Hadzabe, a meal is not only about nourishment, but also about sharing the rewards of collective effort. The laughter and conversations around the fire showed that unity remains the strength that has helped them survive for generations. Witnessing this encounter made me realize that the courage of the Hadzabe does not come from recklessness. It is the result of experience, knowledge, and adaptability passed down through generations. In the modern world, their way of life may seem very different, but it is their deep connection with nature that has allowed them to preserve survival skills that are becoming increasingly rare today. If you found this story interesting, leave a comment and share your thoughts. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more extraordinary adventures.
Across the dry grasslands of northern Tanzania, where low thorn bushes stretch beneath the blazing sun and hot winds carry the scent of red earth through the dry season, I follow the Hadzabe tribe on a remarkable hunt. For weeks, hunters had been finding antelope carcasses and large tracks along the edge of the forest. The older men believed a leopard had returned to this territory. To the Hadzabe, the leopard is more than just a dangerous predator. It is a test of patience, awareness, and deep knowledge of the wilderness. The morning began before sunrise. While the first light still hid behind the acacia trees, the men of the Hadzabe tribe sat quietly around the camp, inspecting their bows and arrows. Each arrowhead was sharpened with care, and every bowstring was tested again and again to make sure the shot would fly true. Their movements were calm, precise, and practiced, as if they had repeated this ritual their entire lives. Once everything was ready, they rose silently, carrying their bows as they disappeared into the forest, slowly waking beneath the morning sun. As we left the camp, the group moved in complete silence, their eyes constantly scanning the ground. At first, I could see nothing except dry sand and scattered grass. Then one hunter suddenly stopped and pointed toward a faint set of tracks pressed into the mud beside a shallow watering hole. To me, they looked meaningless, but to them, the forest was telling a story, revealing the exact path of the predator. The Hadzabe never rushed. They understood that a leopard always watches its surroundings long before revealing itself. Then, ahead of us, a slight movement appeared between the dark rocks. The leopard crouched low against the earth, its eyes scanning the area without pause. The moment happened in an instant. An arrow left the bow almost without a sound. The leopard exploded from its hiding place, vanishing into a cloud of red dust as the hunters immediately followed the fresh trail. They did not run wildly. Instead, they kept their distance evenly spaced apart, studying every mark on the ground and every blade of grass freshly bent by the animal's movement. After a short pursuit, the leopard finally collapsed beneath the shade of a low tree near the rocky edge of the plain. The men stood silently for only a few seconds before beginning to prepare the animal with quick, familiar movements. The meat was divided carefully, and almost no part of the animal was wasted. To the Hadzabe, the true value of a hunt lies in how it feeds the entire community. By the time we returned to camp, the sun was already sinking lower across the savannah. The atmosphere changed almost immediately. Portions of meat were shared naturally, without discussion. Some men continued repairing bows beneath the trees, while others prepared simple musical instruments made from wood and animal hide. No one gave instructions. Everything unfolded naturally, as though it were simply another rhythm of life here. When the food was ready, everyone gathered in a circle around the fire. Meat roasted directly over the hot coals, while every drop of fat was carefully saved. The adults retold the story of the morning's tracking journey, as the children listened closely to every detail. I realized the hunt was about far more than food. It was how knowledge survived, passed from one generation to the next. From reading tracks in dry earth to waiting patiently in the deep forest without disturbing the balance of nature. Night falls quickly over the plains of Tanzania. The wind continued to move through the low trees as everyone remained gathered around the glowing fire. In a modern world where nearly everything is planned and controlled, the life of the Hadzabe still depends on observation, sharing, and trust in the natural world around them. And perhaps what stayed with me most was not the moment of facing the leopard deep in the forest, but the way the entire community ended the day together, sharing a meal beneath a sky filled with stars. I spent several days living with the Hadzabe people near Lake Eyasi in northern Tanzania. No one ever told me where we were going, what we were hunting, or when we would return. They simply walked into the forest, and I followed behind them. In this dry and unforgiving land, the forest is not a place for adventure or exploration the way many outsiders often imagine. For the Hadzabe, the forest provides everything: food, water, energy, and the knowledge needed to survive. There is no fixed schedule for how a day is supposed to unfold here. As the sun slowly rose above the horizon, several men quietly stood up, carrying bows, small knives, and long, sharpened sticks. We crossed an area covered in low bushes when one of the men suddenly signaled for everyone to stop. He crouched down and stared closely at a dry bush near the ground. At first, I saw nothing unusual until I noticed a thick body of a python about the size of a wrist, perfectly camouflaged among the dry leaves. No one panicked. The men quickly exchanged glances and communicated with soft clicking sounds in their language. One of them stepped forward with a wooden bow in his hands, instead of shooting immediately. He slowly drew the bowstring and aimed into the bush, forcing the python to move and reveal more of its body. For several tense seconds, no one moved. Then the arrow flew. Once the animal was under control, I leaned down and firmly held its head to make sure it could no longer strike. Only then did I realize I had almost stopped breathing the entire time. Around me, the men simply looked at the python lying on the ground and quietly nodded to one another, as if everything had happened exactly as expected. A while later, the group stopped beside a patch of soft ground near rocks warmed by the sun. One man pointed toward a faint winding mark in the dusty sand, a trace I almost completely overlooked. According to them, it was a path the python had taken before being discovered in the bushes earlier. From that moment on, the entire group slowed down. They carefully studied every crack between the rocks and every dry tree stump with astonishing focus. For the Hadzabe, even the smallest marks on sand or dry leaves are enough to understand how an animal moved through an area. We continued deeper into the forest. After some time, one of the men pointed toward a hollow tree trunk where a small colony of bees had built a nest inside. What caught my attention was not the taste of the honey, but the way they shared it. The person who found the hive did not keep more for himself. The one who cut the honeycomb did not take the first portion either. Everything was shared naturally and evenly, as if that was simply the way life worked here. During hunting trips that lasted for hours, honey became a quick source of energy directly provided by the forest itself. Once everyone finished eating, they wiped their hands, put out the smoking bundle, and continued walking as though it had only been a short pause along the journey. After walking farther, we stopped in a small clearing and decided to prepare the python right there. The snake was cut into manageable pieces. A small fire was quickly built using dry branches. There were no pots, pans, or complicated tools. Several pieces of meat were placed directly onto the glowing coals. Before long, the smell of roasting meat spread across the savannah. Once the meat was cooked, we sliced it into smaller portions and shared it among everyone. Python meat was firm and slightly chewy. It tasted somewhat like chicken, but richer and stronger. There was no salt or seasoning at all, yet after hours of walking through thick brush, the hot meat tasted surprisingly good. As I sat beside the fire, watching everyone eat, talk, and laugh together, I began to realize something important. What makes the Hadzabe way of life so different is not simply that they hunt and gather food. It is the way they live alongside the environment around them. They do not store large amounts of food, nor do they carry many possessions into the forest. Instead, they rely on their deep understanding of nature, knowing where to find water, where honey may be hidden, and where animals are most likely to appear. The forest sustains them, and they understand it deeply enough to survive within it.
Before every hunt, the Hadzabe men drink fresh goat blood to boost their strength and prepare their minds before entering the harsh African wilderness. But what awaits them is far more than prey. A Nile crocodile over 4 meters long suddenly bursts from the muddy water near the riverbank. Farther away, an African rock python coils beneath layers of dead leaves, while aardvarks roam across the scorching semi-desert. With no guns and no modern technology, the Hadzabe rely only on handmade bows, hunting dogs, and survival skills passed down through generations. Every step could lead to food for the entire tribe, or one mistake that means they never return. As the new day began, the small Hadzabe camp woke to ancient songs echoing through the quiet semi-desert. They danced with the belief that those songs would bring luck and help everyone return safely after the hunt. Before leaving, a few hunters shared a bowl of a nutritious drink obtained from livestock, believing it could strengthen the body and help them keep their energy during long hours under the extreme heat. After that, the group picked up their bows and left the camp to begin the hunt. Aardvarks often appear in this area. Suddenly, everyone stopped beside a freshly disturbed patch of ground, marked by long twisting grooves. They immediately recognized that an aardvark had been searching for food there only a few hours earlier. The group quickly changed direction and followed the trail through low thorny bushes. Then, the aardvarks suddenly appeared. An arrow was fired from close range, and one of them was quickly brought down. As the sun grew harsher, the hunt continued toward a shallow water area hidden deep among the grasslands. Nile crocodiles often appear there. The group used a wooden canoe to approach the prey, then used a long pole to strike. The crocodile immediately thrashed with force, sending mud and water across the swamp. The chase continued for hours under unforgiving heat, until the animal began to weaken near the grassy bank. On the way back to camp, a large movement beneath fallen bushes made the hunting dogs step back and growl low. An old shed skin caught on a dry branch, along with a long drag mark across the sand, signaled the presence of an African rock python. The huge snake was coiled beside a crack in the rocks, its body almost as thick as a small tree trunk and camouflaged with the color of the surrounding earth. The hunters spread out immediately to keep their distance. Instead of using bows and arrows, they decided to capture the python with their hands and a rope. The snake twisted violently, its massive body tightening through the dry grass before gradually slowing down. But what caught the group's attention even more was behind the rock crack. Beneath the soft soil and dry leaves were dozens of python eggs hidden inside the nest. For the Hadzabe, they are an extremely valuable food source, especially during times when hunting becomes difficult. When the hunters returned in the late afternoon, smoke was already rising from the small camp. No one kept the best portion for themselves. The meat was divided equally beside the fire. Part of the crocodile was cut and placed into a pot to simmer until tender, while the eggs were saved to be eaten gradually. Conversations and laughter slowly filled the empty land as the whole community shared dinner after a long day. What makes the Hadzabe most remarkable is not that they hunt dangerous animals, but how they survive through observation and adaptation. They do not hunt for excess or accumulation. Every footprint in the sand, every movement in the bushes, and every opportunity in the desert can become life for the entire community. In a world increasingly dependent on technology and speed, this way of life feels like an ancient memory of humanity that still exists today.
The sun had just risen above the low bushes of the Tanzanian savanna, and the atmosphere around the Hadzabe camp had become more tense than usual. Large paw prints stretching toward the forest edge revealed that a male lion had been appearing near the tribe's hunting grounds for several consecutive days. To the Hadzabe people, lions were not only the most dangerous predators of the savanna, but also rivals that forced even the most experienced hunters to move with extreme caution. But when herds of antelope and wild boars began disappearing from the familiar hunting areas because of the lion's presence, they understood that this confrontation would eventually become unavoidable. There were no loud noises or chaotic preparations like those of modern hunting teams. The Hadzabe quietly inspected their bows, sharpened their spear tips, and covered their bodies with layers of dust to reduce human scent. Their arrows were coated with poison extracted from local desert plants, weapons that had accompanied them for generations across this harsh land. The hunting trail led them through thick, dry thorn bushes, where the lion's tracks appeared clearly in the soft ground. Several tree branches had been clawed apart, and flattened patches of grass showed that the animal had passed through not long before. The Hadzabe moved extremely slowly, making almost no sound at all. Every step was carefully calculated to avoid snapping dry branches or sending birds scattering from the bushes. In this hunt, even the smallest noise could turn everything deadly. As they approached an area filled with large rocks near the forest edge, the group suddenly discovered the fresh carcass of an antelope. The hindquarters had been torn apart, while the ground around it was covered with drag marks and enormous paw prints. That meant the lion was still very close. The atmosphere instantly became heavy. Several men quickly climbed onto high rocks to observe from a distance, while the remaining hunters crouched low behind thorn bushes, gripping their spears tightly. Then a deep, muffled roar suddenly echoed from the forest edge. The sound was not especially loud, yet it was enough to silence the entire savanna. From within the tall grass, a massive male lion slowly emerged. The dark mane surrounding its neck made it appear even larger beneath the morning sunlight. It did not run immediately, but stood still, watching the hunters with cold, unblinking eyes. In that moment, the distance between man and predator was only a few dozen meters. One Hadzabe hunter on the left began moving in a wide circle to distract the animal. At the same time, a poison-tipped arrow suddenly shot through the scorching air and struck deeply into the lion's shoulder. The beast instantly let out a furious roar before charging straight into the bushes. The group quickly scattered in different directions, never remaining in one spot for too long. They understood that a wounded lion was more dangerous than any other creature on the savanna. The chase continued for hours beneath the brutal African heat. The Hadzabe did not attempt a direct assault, but instead kept their distance while silently following the trail of blood and crushed grass. The poison on the arrow slowly began taking effect, causing the lion's movements to weaken and slow. From time to time, a faint roar echoed in the distance like the final warning of the king of the savanna. As the sun slowly lowered toward the horizon, the hunters finally found the lion lying beneath a large tree in the middle of the barren land. No one rushed forward. They stood motionless for a long time, making sure the animal was no longer capable of fighting back. Only when everything was completely safe did the group slowly approach. For the Hadzabe people, this was not simply a hunt, but also an act of respect toward one of nature's most powerful rivals. They returned to the camp with their prize as women and children erupted into cheers. A fire was quickly lit in the center of the clearing, its golden glow reflecting across faces covered in dust after a long and exhausting day. Songs, dancing, and the steady rhythm of drums echoed throughout the African night. In that wild land, the life of the Hadzabe people continued just as their ancestors had survived for thousands of years, relying on hunting skills, patience, and courage to face the harshest forces of nature.